My name's Ray. Ray Gertler. I work for the Arkansas Department of Ed. A lot of my team members are here. I work with Don Benton. He's not here today. But we've, and I think I'm okay with saying this, we've upgraded Don, and we got with us Kirsten Wilson. And she's going to help me with the equity part of our discussion. So we're excited today that you came. Just to kind of set the bar. I heard I don't have the TED Talk streams. Like, I need to lower your I'm not trying to lower your expectations. I'm trying to set them in the appropriate place, if that makes sense. All right. So when you leave here, you will get some tools. You will walk away with some tools that will make you more efficient at doing some of the things as we talk about safety and equity. But more important than that, when you walk away today, if we're talking about the pit, we're going to take you to the pit. And we're going to make sure, it's almost like identifying where the pits are. And it's like putting them on your radar. And that's really what the today is really all about, is to really make you think, create an awareness, or some ideas and some topics that you should find challenging. Everything that we present today won't have a solution. It'll be us trying to find out where we're going. And hopefully, when we meet this time next year, if we're in the pit, we're a little bit ahead where we were the previous year. And that's what we're trying to create. So you'll have some solutions, but I think you'll end up walking away with more awareness and questions than solutions, if that makes sense. So we hope that you leave here challenged as we lay some discussions out there. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to talk with your group before you respond on your pair day, okay? So I know this seems like a pretty basic question, but it's all a part of the setup, all right? So I need you to play with me so we can play later, all right? So you're probably sitting at a table with your friends, right? That's Lisa Academy over there, right? All right. So we got Lisa over here. You're solo, man, aren't you? Who are you with?
I'm Lisa.
You're Lisa as well. All right. So Stuttgart, everybody over here, Stuttgart?
I'm just Lisa.
You're Lisa?
Just Lisa.
All right. So I'm hoping that you're sitting with people that you kind of like. So I'm going to give you just a moment, and I want you to talk about in the last year and a half, right? And I don't want to overdo COVID, but a lot has changed since COVID, right? Our schools look different today, and are going to look very different by the end of the year with the kind of money that's coming through. So what I want you to do is just real quick at your table, 2 minutes. What things are you seeing changing in your school today that look different than what it did even just a year and a half ago?
First would be the amount of technology we use and the types of technology. I mean, we didn't even have money to buy snowboards. We were just...
And if you are playing with this, y'all can ignore me, I'm talking to the digital folks. If y'all want to play along and go ahead and put your responses into the pair deck, we encourage the participation as well.
I think that just too, and we're told pretty much we need to use technology all the time, so that if we need to go virtual, that's noticed, that you can do that without disruption. And we have kids being quarantined every day, so yes, so total technology, for us.
I think for my role as an instructional tech, it helped me because all the times they're saying we need to use tech in the lower grade levels, even they would say, well, kindergarten can't do this, kindergarten can't do this. Well, let's see, and they can, log on and do what they need to do.
Not to rush you, but the conversation seems to have gotten pretty quiet pretty quick. Here's what I want you to do, okay? After you've talked, put some of your responses into the pair deck right now on your phones. So you discussed, but I heard some things, we all, I hope you're comfortable. You share out some of the things. You said a greater awareness with instructional tech. I mean, if you've been working instructional tech, you're probably thinking, in a way, it's on the radar.
Yes.
We are. I think we have a whole team. We've got a whole team with the digital learning unit that is like, yes, we're important. We have arrived. And they're like, we have arrived. And you're like, we've been here, but thank you.
We weren't at the popular table, but we are now.
But what else? We talked about technology, equipment.
Just teacher requirements, they expect us to have technology and to do that. Let that be the main way to deliver.
Oh yeah,
lesson plans and
how to integrate and
expectations.
use technology is kind of through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Any other things that kind of hit the radar? All right, we got all kinds of new software, including LMSs. If people who never used the LMS now have an LMS. People now maybe know the difference between a content management system and an LMS. Maybe not, but we got Google Classroom. Even if they knew what it was, it's on steroids now, right? Everybody knows what that is, even all the way down to kindergarten, which is insane. We would have never have thought that. I don't think it's insane, but we never would have anticipated that 2 years prior. Kindergartners in Google Classroom. That's just ludicrous, right? But now it's a reality. Another thing that I think that's been really important is connectivity. Connectivity at your schools have all been upgraded, and connectivity at the home has increased. That's one of those discussions about we're connecting students more than ever. Devices. Is anybody here not planning on being on one-on-one by the end of the 22? Not only are you going to be one-on-one, you're probably going to have a classroom set and a home set at this point in time. You're almost like, what even is that ratio? That's not 2 to 1, it's 1 to 2. You don't like that's crazy. And compared to where we were, to where we are. So here's a harder question that I want you to really think about. I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to think about this one as well. Okay? So we talked about the things that have increased. Now I want you to think about your current set and all the things that have increased, and think about where we are. What things have not changed? What things have not increased? I'm gonna let y'all struggle with that one a little bit and talk it out.
I think attendance is not increased.
Exactly.
I think it's decreased a lot.
Decreased last year for sure because it didn't count last year
Yes.
for our schools.
Yes.
Kids didn't think it was important to come.
And they still don't. For us, they still don't
Parent
think they should.
involvement, engagement, discussions have decreased. Kids not doing the work is increased for us if they go virtual.
Well, one thing for us that has stayed constant lately is we did have the virtual option last year. We did not offer a virtual option this year, so it has stayed constant that they would come back to school. And it's just not been as successful as it was before, because now they don't think they can say, oh, I can work, I need to go work. Sure.
Almost every student that started year virtual last year, our principal got back to campus because, except for one health.
As you're finishing up your discussions, go ahead and start putting your responses in your pear deck as well. Thank you. You can keep talking, but as the responses start coming in, that'll kind of give me a tip on y'all's discussions are kind of coming to a close. I got student engagement has decreased. So what else has either stayed the same or decreased?
Attendance has decreased.
Attendance. It's just funny, a lot of times when we use the word engagement, people are talking about attendance, and it's kind of more than that, but it's hard to measure attendance seems to be the measure that we're using for engagement, even though engagement's so much more. What else?
Self-care.
Okay, that's good. Self-care. Teacher-wise, all the way down.
Or even the boundaries, right, between
Oh, that's good.
everything's online, you do it at home and not when you're at work. I mean, teachers already did that, but
I think there's a bigger
It's
amount
even
of
more.
decrease in those boundaries.
I'd say that when I do increase, decrease, it's like going to the doctor and you get a negative. Is that good or bad? Yeah, but definitely changing boundaries.
I think changing boundaries and changes for families at home, like they have school in their homes now, more so than they did before, so I don't know if that'd be a decrease or increase, however.
Well, I would say it's maybe a decrease for a school, but an increase. But there are some things that haven't shifted. You all talked about parents a little bit over here. What was that? I talked about parent engagement. What was it? Was it down?
Did y'all see that? What do you mean?
I don't know if you say it was down. Maybe it's at the same level. Maybe it's not. When I think about things that haven't changed, there's some things that stand out to me, especially when the apps. Do y'all remember when now every vendor was throwing out there free apps? How much teacher, especially on the start of it, how much teacher education was going on whenever that hit, right? And your summer may have looked a little bit different. but you still only have X amount of professional development. How much professional development went before you gave the kid a device? You know, like, are we taking kids through the process? Or is how we're training kids to use the device that they have the same as it was before we had all this technology? What about parents? What about the parent education piece? Has it changed at all? Or are we still doing the same thing that we were before these things happened? I think we don't have any more time. I think that's part of the burnout that we were talking about. We have increased demands, maybe increased challenges even, but the time limits that we have or the constraints that we have are still the same. There's some other pieces that I think have stayed the same as well. I mean, it's almost like it exploded and we're still trying to catch up to the explosion. And even to this day, our schools are getting, you may not even realize how the landscape's changing at this point. We're hoping to change a little bit of that today. But the idea is, as we're having this technology explosion, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about automated cars and AI and all that, okay? I think you heard that several times already today, right? But there is this technology explosion in our schools right now because there's an influx of money, right? And there is a way that our school currently operates that may not have caught up to the shift in technology that just exploded, right? And as this seems to be growing faster than our schools are changing, whether it be our teachers, whether it be our parents, whether it be our culture, whether it be our schools, whether it be our walls, right? And as this increases and this stays the same, it creates these gaps, right? And you may be thinking about, what are those gaps? I mean, think about it. What gaps are happening? What gaps could this cause? In my opinion, and this is my opinion, in our opinion, I think two of the gaps that we're seeing right now is one in safety and the second one in equity. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is safety. I think when we started, and I still think this is true today, I think when we start putting devices into homes, I think internet at home is going to be a new expectation by the school districts. I think keeping our kids, if we expect them to learn at home, they're going to expect us to make sure they have a device at home, and they're going to expect us to give them connectivity at home. And with the kind of money that you're getting right now, I'll be honest, even the State Department has an expectation that you're going or making an effort to connect students at home when possible. And even at the government level, outside of education, they're trying to create broadband to create change the statewide infrastructure so that every citizen has access. You know what I mean? So when we have this conversation, the connectivity in the home, then I don't know if we realize this, but for many of our parents, I know they talk about connectivity, broadband, 92%, but on the tech side of the world, I want to be like, I'm not talking about a cell phone service, right? I'm not talking about your mama's smartphone. There's a difference between your mom having a smartphone and you bringing a hotspot into the house in which everybody in the house can get onto the internet. You know what I mean? For many of our families, we're bringing that environment to them without educating them on how to use it. And I think not only are we changing that environment, we're also sending devices home that they may have never used before. And I think we have these educator hats on, and if you play in this space, you know, but if you don't play in this space, it became a reality. You could take your lowest tech teacher, right? And in education, something like, oh, they're not very tech savvy, right? And we try to work with them. Everybody has a level, right? We work with. But I'm telling you, by the time we send devices home, the least tech teacher is way better than the least tech parent or grandparent. I mean, I was listening to my wife giving instructions to some of her kindergarten grandparents, and they don't even know what a Chromebook is. They don't know what Chrome is. They don't know, I mean, you're talking about then I'm like, oh my goodness, we sent these things home. Not only did we not educate, I think the kids had that experience in the classroom, hopefully, but there's another piece of this, and that is there's a significant change in not only the expectations of schools, there's a significant change for this to work and expectations for parents in the home and what their role is when we send those devices from the classroom to the house. If we expect learning to happen at home, then we now have to make sure our parents can function like the parents we want them to be. You know what I mean? And so I don't think this is a all-in-all solution. I think there are multiple pieces to parent education that need to happen from use. But on the safety side, if you hadn't heard about this one, and you can see it on your phone as well, if you hit answer question, it'll actually pop up the website. You can go if you have, it's smacktalk.info if you haven't heard about it. Smacktalk.info is, if you could call it cyber hygiene if you want. Somebody's got the Mr. Steve video going. She's not, that's how I know you're on task, you know what I mean? Because you went to the website. But we do have a new Mr. Steve video if you haven't seen it. It's easy and fun to share on your websites if you haven't shared it yet. But the whole idea around Smack Talk is providing resources to students, to teachers, but also to parents. So if you're going to send a device home, not only do they know how to use it, we have to, all that cyber hygiene safety that we're still trying to work on with teachers, we need to go ahead. I don't care how far your teachers are along. We got to start expanding that voice so that if we're sending it home, parents know how to use that device and how the kid's going to use it safely at home. I mean, seriously, your parents have to know when you send that device home, they need to know what to watch for, what the kid should and shouldn't be doing. And the filters that you set up kids are savvy. You can't just have technologies and expect the kid to be safe, or think you have the Chromebooks locked down in a way that the kid's not going to get in trouble. You know what I'm saying? There has to be some parent education, and if we're going to send it home, we now have a responsibility to make sure that they're safe, not only at school, but at home, and that environment is an online environment. Do you know what I mean? And the parent, Smack Talk for Parents, you'll see some resources in there. We send home parent newsletters, we send home posts. I'm not saying it's not the perfect solution, but I know, and you don't have to copy every piece of it, but there are pieces in there that are useful. Go to the flyers, still a link, still a video, still a resource. Don't make your life so hard that you can't lift, but adding one little line, one little piece to your newsletter, one little thing that the teachers are sending home in their newsletter for elementary. It doesn't matter, but we all should be doing something to make sure that parents know better, and it should be K-12. It can't just be the middle school cyber hygiene course that's kind of popular. It's got to be K-12, because every kid's now got a device at home, and we're the ones that gave it to them. You know what I'm saying? And so we have this responsibility to make sure our parents are educated. Here's the other one that we talked a little bit about. Okay, even today, even after we got, sometimes I describe it as a wild, wild west when COVID first hit, and they're like, free apps, free apps, free apps. All right, your mama told you that nothing in life is free, right? And in today's era, the new standard for money is not the dollars, it's the data, right? You heard this all the time, but it's one thing when it's your data and it's your decisions. It's another thing when it's your student data or your teachers making decisions for my student, my child, right? When you're using products for my child, and they said local parentis, when you're acting on behalf of my child, are you acting in the way that, are you doing something with my kid's data that I would never do? Are you with me? And I know when we're having this discussion, especially when you're trying to meet the demands of the classroom, you're just trying to get through tomorrow. Much less trying to figure out, is there a good privacy policy here, right? But you can't trust everybody, and you can't trust every app. You just can't. And so how do we manage it? There's a couple of things that you can put on your radar. So doing nothing, just like with parents, doing nothing makes you extremely vulnerable, okay? Educators who choose apps, and if you don't have a district process for deciding which is approved and what's not approved, like this is definitely a teacher education piece. Because if a teacher recommends an application that is somehow used against your child, the school has a responsibility, but the teacher has a responsibility. Robin and I were just discussing, it wasn't too long ago in Northwest Arkansas, that a media specialist recommended an app to a child, and on that app that the media specialist recommended, she met a sexual predator. And I'm not saying it's the social media, I'm not saying it's the media specialist's fault. But what I am saying that we need to be making informed decisions before, we recommend apps that are being sent home for kids. And not only do they need to be instructional, we need to be recommending applications that are trusted and safe, right? Like
I'll give an example. So there is a platform that a lot of fine arts teachers use called Discord, and some of you guys may use it. It's very popular among gamers. But it's also a highly traveled platform for sexual predators. And when I used to work for Virtual Arkansas, one of our teachers wanted to use it. We have other platforms that they can communicate with their students. Because we have a responsibility to our students at Virtual Arkansas, we told that teacher she could not use it with our students. However, she had worked for a prior district and they had let her use it there. So just know that, well, I've used it somewhere else. When they come to you, that doesn't, I would not take that, because I said, I'm sorry, but we've done our homework and it's not going to be used here. And just be aware of that there are places that it's used other places, and just because one school district uses it doesn't mean it's safe. So trust your judgment and do your homework.
But each app that your district decides to do is a local decision to make. I guess the challenge I'm bringing you today is that it shouldn't be the Wild West. It should be a strategic process and an informed process when a district, or even a teacher, if it's a teacher level, classroom level decision, and they need to make sure that they're educated in a way to know that the apps that they're recommending are safe for kids to use. So how do we do that in a way, because I'm not a lawyer, our teachers aren't lawyers and they're busy. There are a couple of ways that we can vet apps pretty quickly and much more safely than what they're currently using. So I'm going to throw some resources out there for you to put on your radar. One of them is called the Student Privacy Pledge. This one is sponsored by a group called the Future for Privacy Forum. They are respected nationwide. They're endorsed by PTAC, which is the Privacy Technical Assistance Center that the feds endorse, okay? If you click on that link, you can click on the link on this one. I do want to show them this one. These are all companies that have agreed to the Future for Privacy Forum privacy policy. And they are listed through here. You can read more about the privacy policy if you want. Your teachers don't have to unless they're super interested in that. But one of the things that they can kind of check for, this check's better than a no check. Are you with me? All right. So go on here, see if they're on here. If they're on here, I feel much better about a teacher recommending an app because I trust the lawyers at FPF, right? I probably trust the lawyers at FPF more than what, I think I could say that, probably more than what I trust your local legal team. Only because these people specialize in student privacy alone. I'm not saying they're better lawyers, but I am saying that they are experts in student privacy law. Are you with me? All right, so this is a really good one. Another really good one, it's on the middle tab. I got the slide deck open too.
Whoops.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry.
No, you're good. The other one is called I Keep Safe. Okay, I Keep Safe also has a list of products that are monitoring products to make sure that they're FERPA and COPA compliant. And if you don't know about one of those two things, we're doing more about that later, but COPA is really about, especially for applications, it's important across the realm, but there are different rules. COPA applies different rules to kids who are under the age of 13. And you can see some of this. I think Remind does a really good job about the kind of notifications it should do whenever it's going back and forth. But this also has a clear list, and you can see which badges they have earned by the FTC. So these badges are FTC endorsed for the Federal Trade Commission. Are you with me? So the Federal Trade Commission has determined these badges for these groups. Are you with me? And you'll see a lot of the same companies on both, right? So I'm telling you, like if I see it on both, my confidence just went up another level, right? My confidence went up when I found it on one. My confidence went up another level when I found it on two. Are you with me? Okay. And then the last one that I really like, and I know you've heard about this group before if you work in tech at all, is the Common Sense evaluations. Now, Common Sense Media is popular for resources. They also have a specific section on there where they evaluate the apps for each parent, and they, in common terms language, They explain why it is safe, why it isn't safe. This is not only good for teachers, this is a good one to share with parents, okay? Because you can put at the top, you can type in something like Roblox or TikTok if you're trying to say, and I'm not saying any of these things are bad. I'm saying that when you make a decision, make an informed one. Are you with me? And you can see,
It also tells when it's last updated too. They just did it recently.
and their updates are done by licensed lawyers as well. And if you click on it, it will tell you why it endorses. And you can weigh the pros and cons about why you would or you wouldn't use this app. I'm telling you, these are the kinds of things I'm going to look at if I'm working at a district level before I sign a contract. There are the things I'm going to try to consider them to consider. You could add this to your procurement process if you work at that level. But even at a teacher level, I feel much more confident if a teacher checked these 3 things before they recommended an app to my parents. You know what I mean? At least now we have a process or a system that they can check that's not just overtaxing, and they can feel more confident about the decisions that they're making. And if you ask them, did you check, they actually have an answer other than, yeah, it looked fun. Are you with me? And we want them to recommend fun apps. Like, I'm down with that. But there's a way to do both. It doesn't have to be fun or safe. We want fun and safe, right? We want the both. We want the marriage. Okay? I don't know. I want to put this out there because I'm always looking for resources. So if you have an idea of how or what tool you might use to vet apps, please throw it into the question. Because I would love to check it out. And we may, you got one, yeah, drop it in there. All right, drop it in there. And you can even show it, it may be good for us to show it. That way, if it's, I said digital learning unit. All right, nice. So there's a big, are y'all all here? Okay, the digital learning unit is here, led by Kirsten Wilson. You want to talk about that piece of it?
So we presented a lot of things to you, but we know that time is limited both for you and for your teachers. So if there's an app that you're wanting, our team serves every region in the state. You can reach out to me or them and say, we're looking at this, would you guys mind looking at this? And we can go and find the information and share it with you so that you're not having to spend your time doing that. And we're just going to share with you what we find here. We may also give some input in regards to how this is from a functional standpoint of, is this an app that will challenge the students for them to utilize their own resources and create, or is this more of a consumer type of app, like from an educational standpoint? So we'll also add some components to that, not only with the safety part, but also what is some of the academic benefits of it as well. So we can do some of that legwork for you all, so that you guys can keep doing what you need to do, and we can just give it back to you. We're not going to expect you to tell us what you did with the information. We're not going to tell you yes, use it, or no, use it. We're just going to say this is the information, and then it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that. We've done that for a couple of schools so far. A couple of principals had some money that teachers wanted to spend things on, and they were like, I don't have the time to look at this right now. Can you guys give us some feedback on this? And we gave that feedback to them, and that helped them move forward with the decision without them having to take the time to do that. So that's something that we can do. If you are wanting to if you're a teacher in here and you're wanting to go to your principal about something, but you have a gazillion things that you're needing to do, reach out to us, let us do the work for you, send it back to you, and then you can bring it. You don't even have to tell your principal we did it for you. You can totally take the credit. We're all good with that. So, that's another way we can help serve as well.
Thank you. So another piece that I think is a trend that hasn't been talked about a whole lot today is the change in the big shift one of the big shifts that we're seeing is the shift in video surveillance and device surveillance. Whether it be Go Guardian, that's a really popular, but there's all kinds. Gaggle's out there, Bark's out there. If you don't know these, you're probably going to hear about them soon. And what they're doing is they're doing the same thing we're talking about. Like, how do you keep kids safe at home? When you're the one giving them the device, you have this responsibility. And we start enforcing the local parentis, and we start monitoring their device. We start monitoring their accounts. But not only that, think about the cameras. I was listening to I don't know if you know Chad Brinkley, but Chad Brinkley works out of Murfreesboro. Okay, he's Apple on steroids, all right? But he was describing to me about the new iPad and the new lenses on the cameras, and it just had me thinking after listening to the counselors yesterday too, Robin, and when you have a classroom of teachers now, when they're with their Chromebooks out, how many cameras are in the room at that moment? If you have a room of 25, okay, it's funny that somebody's worried about the one camera that's being posted in the ceiling. That's you just added one to the 50 that already exist. Because they got the phone in the pocket, now they got the phone on the Chromebook, and now and there's a big trend in us mounting photo equipment right now, camera equipment, because we got more money than we know how to spend on it informatively. We're posting a lot of this equipment. We're seeing more video surveillance in schools than we ever have before, right? Because then you could zoom your classroom without having a camera and all these things. But not only that, but the quality of our cameras are insane compared to what they used to be. I mean, at this point, if someone was to have a camera in the building or on a phone, do you know how they could zoom in from across the room and see your screen at that point? You got 50 cameras, they're getting cheaper, they're getting way better, way more affordable, and in a regular classroom, there's 51 cameras. Like, I didn't piece that together until I was driving to work today. I was like, I knew it was big, but oh my gosh, 51 cameras. And the counselor the other day was saying, well, it was funny, I was going to get on to this kid about sending me a video about the teacher doing this, this, and this. And I was going to get down, she was cracking on him about using his phone in class. And I pulled him into my counselor's office, and he was using the Chromebook to videotape the teacher. And I was thinking, just this moment of like, oh yeah, there's like a ton of cameras in a room. And the quality is insane. And when we start thinking about not just the video surveillance, but it's not, you combine video surveillance, camera technology, AI, which is now monitoring emails, social media platforms, and you take that and you put that on top of how much more affordable storage is. So now we can just store all this stuff. It starts adding up. And every time we add a layer to it, this is all fun, but it's like with power or data, as you collect more of it, your responsibility grows too. Are you with me? And I think that was one of the pieces I was talking like, this is growing, but do you realize as we put all this stuff here, the responsibility for us to use this and use this wisely is getting, y'all see it now, right? It's like, it's not just the equipment that's increasing, it's the support that's increasing. That's huge. And not only that, the privacy and safety, security component of this is huge at this point. And every time you bring something in, you're adding a layer of responsibility. So every time you bring in a vendor, okay, I don't know, we always think about that, right? It solves a solution, but it also is going to create or add to your responsibilities of things that you're managing and trusting a third party to now do on your behalf, which is still your responsibility. Are you with me? So, we talked about cameras, but not only that, just the idea of video conferencing, all in general, whether the kid be at home, but I'm telling you, there's some things that are happening in the classroom when class is going on and the teacher's trying to manage a classroom and they're being asked to stream at the same time. There are things, even with a teacher that has good classroom management, if a kid has a behavioral problem or something that is legitimately medical, that parent of that other kid who's home with that should never witness. Are you with me? Like, now when we're video conferencing, we don't know who else is in the room. You got no idea of who else is hearing the conversations. Whether it be the flip side, we always hear like the parent conversations, but I'm telling you, like if I have a para or something working with the kid, there are things and discussions that are going on, even that boom mic. If you have something like that in your classroom, that means whoever's on the other side is hearing every single conversation, whether it be private or not. Are you with me? That they should never hear. The changes in geo-tracking, we're not going to play that YouTube video. Well, and what I mean by geo-tracking is you may have heard these, but there's an increased capability of us to like badge kids as they're getting on the bus, making sure they're getting off at the right stop. That sounds really great, and I'm not saying it's not. But as you collect that information, it's good to know that you know where they are at all times. But now you now have a responsibility to protect the fact that you know where kids are all the time. And that means if anybody else found that out, of where they get dropped off and precisely at what time they get dropped off, do you understand the responsibility that you're accepting when you decide to adopt that product? Like that's the piece that we're talking about here. Not only that, like geo-tracking is now to a point where even in a building, you can tell when a kid leaves. Well, good, I know that he's truant. But do you really need to know that the kid's in the bathroom, or is that a step over of privacy? Are you with me? Like these conversations, like when the technology's moving and we're being faced with problems and situations, that I was like, I'm not saying to slow down, I'm just saying we need to think about this. And I think it creates a really interesting situation where I'm trying to decide, are we protecting or are we overreaching? Do you know what I mean? And the thing is there's not a wrong answer. But it's a discussion that we need to have whenever we're adopting a new product or a new system. Like we all have that responsibility when we're at the table to ask some of the hard questions. And like this is a great product, but are we ready to be the stewards of this information? And if you're not, maybe you need to look at another product or another solution. I think they were talking about throwing money at problems. Not every problem needs to be solved with an app. Are you with me? Sometimes there's a good fit, and sometimes there's not. And we gotta know when to walk away. And I think one of the thoughts or ideas that will lead us into our next part of the discussion is when we talk about surveillance software, whether it be like the monitoring, the email, and the language that people send, or their social media apps, do you know who it over-identifies kids as risk? Do you think it's white kids? Nope. These apps, these AI machines, even today, are over-identifying issues with students of color. So even the solutions that we're adopting may be compounding on equity issues that already exist. Are you with me? Because, and all of a sudden, kids who never would have gone to the office for saying the word in an email, well, if that's how they talk with their friends, maybe they shouldn't have sent it. But it's over-identifying students based on how, because the AIs are most of the AIs and the development for AI is created by a bunch of white people. One of the biggest machine learning techniques that they use is, do you remember the Enron email scares? What those AI machines do is they take all these emails and they process how people talk to each other. That's how a lot of it was done, because the emails were made public. So you got thousands of emails and they put that in a machine learning system. But they're feeding it a bunch of middle class white people to teach the AI. And then when they do that, these AIs are over-identifying students of color. And the technology that was meant to protect them, it's now over-identifying them. And I'm gonna let Kirsten take it from there.
Thanks, Greg. I'm Kirsten. I'm State Coordinator of Digital Learning, and I have been since June 1st, so I just want to clarify that. I'm a newbie. I'm going to ride that for a little while. So I want to talk to you, and it said equity, but I really want to call it from the perspective of tequity, focusing on that. And the areas of tequity that I want to focus on with you guys are in representation, devices, and when we say devices, the actual physical tools, and then the learning opportunities, and that's where we're talking about the ed tech. And what we want to do is, with tequity, we want to be able to bridge to access and opportunity. One of the things a quote that I love when I talk to people why we should be doing digital learning is that opportunity is equally distributed, that talent is distributed equally among everyone, but opportunity is not. And digital learning helps to diminish that in some ways. Now, we could argue that we don't have access to Wi-Fi and things like that, but when kids can get access to digital learning, we do see the opportunity rise for them. So today I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about equity in both our delivery of our devices and our representation. And I want to talk about what we can control versus what we can't control. We can't control that there are certain parts of our state that there is no Wi-Fi, there is no cell service. We can't get that. We can't do that. We can't take care of that. But there are things that we can control when it comes to Tequity. Ray touched on that a little bit about parent education, student education, and how they use those devices. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. But before we talk about that, I want for you for a second to think about the lens that you carry when you walk into the world. And so you can either jot it down on your phone or you can reflect on it really quickly. I'm not using the Pear Deck here because this is something that is very personal for some people, so I don't feel like you have to share it out. But I'm going to be very vulnerable with you, and I'm going to share my lens with you. I walk into the world as a white woman. I've been married to the same man for 27 years. I was raised by highly educated parents. I'm the oldest of 4 children. And I went to college. And I have never had to concern myself with making sure that I had food on the table. So I've never had an issue with food scarcity. And I was raised in a fairly religious conservative home. My views have changed as I've gotten older, but that viewpoint skews or shows my perspective. I am the mother of 2. That affects my perspective on how I see the world. So I bring that into my space when I'm with people. And so I want you to think for a minute of what you bring into the world when you step into this space. And so when you walk into a space with your kids, with devices, with technology, what do you bring to you? I also come from a perspective that I'm an early adopter of technology. I will be 50 next year. Okay, so I'm right on the cusp of people that really embrace technology and people that hate technology. And I sit in that world all of the time. But I lived in a home where technology was something that we had access to. And so I was able to be an early adopter. That's why I'm in this space now. But not everybody has had that same opportunity. So I bring that perspective as well. So I want you to sit for a second. I'm going to be quiet and let you think about what perspective, what lens do you wear when you walk into your space with students? Now, one of the things that I'm bringing you all back, and thank you for reflecting for a second, but one of the things that I think really shined a light during the pandemic is that, and we saw it play out on social media, we saw it with some of our older kids and what they were facing, we saw it in their fears, we saw an elevation in our kids having more emotional needs, social emotional needs, we saw it in adults, what was happening with them. But one of the things is that I want to talk about is that we walked in with our own perspectives. But do we always see things through other people's eyes? So I have a picture here. I'm going to show this one and another one. And I want you to think about, what do you see in this picture? I will tell you, when I saw these 2 pictures 2 years ago, I was going through a training and it was talking about our bias in our content and what we teach instructionally. But as a tech person, I feel like there is bias too. We make assumptions. We all have biases. And it's not something, and I want to say this really clearly and loudly so that everybody hears it. There is no shame in having a bias. What the shame is, or the problem is when you don't recognize it and work on it. it's important for us to get curious and evaluate. Most of the time when we make a decision, our first decision is going to be based on the lens of our own perspective. And so I encourage you to use the habit of pause before you make a decision and ask yourself, whose perspective am I making this decision through? The other thing is that are we making procedures and policies that largely benefit the dominant culture and create barriers for the underrepresented? When we make policies and procedures for how we hand out our technology, if we require parents to come up and sign things, you know, what are we making barriers for so that we are impacting the underrepresented where they can't have the same access? I will just give you an example. My busiest time of year is when school starts. They required me to come up to the school to sign so that my son could get his Chromebook. And I have all kinds of technology at home. And they did it at a time I was across the state on the day that they were making it available. I could not get to the school. My husband was out of town traveling. I was really fortunate that my daughter, who had not left for college, they permitted me to let her go sign for me. But had I not had her, and how many other parents are in much more difficult situations, and they were offering a device, and that was supposed to be opportunity and access, but was it? Because it created a barrier for me my son to get the tool that he needed to have to start school. Are the newest and best devices, where are they going to, and who are they going to in your schools? Or are they going to the gifted and the academic high performers? Or are they going to the general population? I would also question with the devices that are going to teachers. Are your AP teachers, are your teachers that are teaching those higher level courses getting the best and better devices? And then the teachers that have the struggling students are getting the devices that are either hand-me-downs or not as a quality a device. And these are just questions. You guys may have no control over this, but these are questions that you can be asking. And then a curious thing, and I ask this question because I'm just going to be honest, I've seen it. Are we withholding disbursement of devices because of a few situations and generalizing those situations to all students? We have the devices in our buildings, but we're not giving them out because devices came back broken, or they didn't bring the charge cords back, or we're not giving them the hotspot because they used all the data on the YouTube. So we're not giving them to anybody. Those are some of the things that happen, and we have to ask about that. How is that impacting? In addition to equity with our physical technology, we also have a responsibility to provide equity in our representation too. And so you're probably wondering why I'm in a flight suit right now. Okay, this is the explanation. I was in 7th grade. The Challenger went into the sky with Krista McCullough. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I did not want to be a teacher for the reasons I was told to be a teacher. The reasons I was told to be a teacher is because good little girls have families and have babies, and a teacher, you can do that and have that job. I wanted to be a professional educator. I did not want to be a mom first and then teach. Krista McCullough showed me I could be a professional educator. Not that there's anything wrong with that choice and that path, but for me, I needed representation that showed it's okay to pick this path to be a teacher and make that path and then I didn't have to choose the other if I didn't want it. We have to show representation in our schools, both in what we do with technology and how we represent it. So when you're picking things and you're showing things and you're giving your kids things, you need to make sure you have representation. If you are in a school where there is not representation, you have to show it in ways because they need to know the world out there does not look just like their community. There are some very monogamous communities in Arkansas, and they need to be able to see that the world is not that monogamous. It's important, and I'm going to give an example real quick of my daughter. My daughter, she took a class from a woman from Jordan, who was their English teacher in 10th grade. And before she had Miss Nori, she had this perception, and it wasn't something we taught in our homes, but she had got it from the culture that you get off of television. She thought that Middle Eastern people were all terrorists. She grew up in a post 9/11 world. I had no idea. We had this conversation and we were talking about representation, and I was telling her, Emery, how do I share with people how important it is for representation? She goes, Mom, Miss Nori is one of the most impactful teachers I have, but one of the things that I will take away is that I know that every time I see a Middle Eastern person, they're not terrorists, is what she told me, because I had Miss Nori, and she taught me that. I said, well, where did you get that idea? She said, it was all over television. I said, well, your dad and I didn't teach you that. We don't have that opinion. And she said, but it was everywhere. I was afraid of anyone that was Middle Eastern. That's why we need representation in our schools, because our parents, they may not be teaching it. Our own television, our own social media, kids are exposed to those things, and we have to have representation. We have to show positive representation of all cultures and everything that we present, both in technology and what we do through our curriculum. So one of the tools, and he said that we were going to talk about tools, one of the tools that I use with our team when we're presenting online learning is the Universal Design for Learning Guide or Framework. And they are in the process of adding the framework where they're adding to it an equity advisory board, where it's not just guidelines that are talking about removing barriers of access when in regards to learning, but also identifying those barriers when it is in regards to equity. I highly encourage, if you have not explored the Universal Design for Learning through CAS.org, that go and expand and learn about this framework. This empowers teachers and learners to become expert learners. It's a great framework. So what can we do? This is what I have been doing. And you can do what you do the work, listen to podcasts, read the books, go to webinars. Learn how we can represent and help students and create equity. Examine your practices and the basis for your decisions. Like I said before you make a decision, remember you have a lens, take a pause, and put somebody else's lens on before you make that decision. Be an activist for representation, both physically and in the content presented in your students' learning environment and the tech that you picked for your students with Ed Tech. And encourage diverse voices both with educators and students. Ask questions, listen, and act accordingly. So this wraps up our presentation. That's our contact information. I will tell you that my entire team is here. Team, if you could just stand up for a minute so you guys know who supports digital learning in the state of Arkansas. This is my team. Sherry, you better stand up right there. And they are here to support you, your students, your districts. Please reach out to me. I will help you, or I will put you in contact with your regional representative. We function as a team, so you won't just get one of us, you get all of us, because we work together and we lean on each other. We all have different expertise that can help bring whatever you need to the table. We can customize things for you. We can help you with any aspect of digital learning that you might have.
I think one of the biggest takeaways we hope that you have today is, one, you get to know who we are, get to know that we're real people, and if there's anything we are guilty of, we care a lot, and we care a lot about you. And so we hope that just spending a little bit of time with us today will make you more likely to reach out to us tomorrow. And if you have questions around privacy, I know that people don't, but it's important. And if you have questions about it, hit me up. I mean, what you do, it's kind of like what you do every day. It feels really natural, you know, and hit me up. I don't mind answering privacy questions. It may be boring to you, but it's part of the gig, you know what I mean?
And he loves it. And I also want to say that if you have questions or you want to thought partner with us as you're going through things, you want a different lens to look at things, we are here for that, as well as helping you vet tech, ed tech products and things like that as well. But we want for kids to see themselves in their spaces, and we want them to know that the world is a wonderful place, and we want them to be equipped to go out in the world and realize that it's not just from one perspective. If you ever get the chance, The Danger of One Story on YouTube, or it's a TED Talk, go Google it, watch it. It's extremely profound. It was a TED Talk in 2008, but it's still as very relevant today as it was in 2008.
But thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.